All right, and welcome to another episode of Fireside Chicago, where we host fireside chats with prominent leaders from Chicago's business community, live on Zoom with live interactive Q&A every Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30 a.m. I am your host, Tim Shum. Today we have David Loiselle on the program. I'm going to introduce David here in a second. I just want to highlight some of the additional guests that we have as we close out April. Next Tuesday, we have Nick Moran coming on the show, April 28th. Nick is the founder and general partner of New Stack Ventures. It's his own venture capital firm that he started 4 or 5 years ago. He's also the founder and host of the Full Ratchet podcast. So if you're interested in technology, tech investing, fundraising, the technology community, venture capital, Nick is one of the most well-networked folks within venture capital across the country. He sits out of Chicago. Tune in for that show for sure. Next Thursday, April 30th, Jeff Rossett. Jeff is the founder and CEO of Sales Assembly. We're going to be talking about everything sales, marketing, how to pivot your product or service in this environment, how to run a sales organization. Tune in for that if you're interested in that topic. Ladies and gentlemen, we have David Loiselle on the program today. David is a former corporate HR executive who has worked with both large public companies as well as small to mid-sized venture capital and private equity funded tech firms. He now runs his own firm, LOHIGH Talent Consulting, which focuses on creating the right people processes to assist small to mid-sized high growth companies achieve their business objectives. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Tim. I'm very excited to chat with you today.
Absolutely. I love the headshot, by the way. It looks like stage left. Someone was just rocking this awesome joke. Do you remember what you were laughing at?
Several jobs ago, executive photo shoot, and they sent me to my work email a series of really great professional photos. That is the one that I forwarded home to my girlfriend at the time, now wife, because I thought it was an entertaining photo. When I left that job, it was the only one that came with me. So that has now repurposed itself several times over. I think it was a gentleman named Justin Winget, who is a heck of a photographer and a great entertainer.
That's great. On fire you got to leave it no matter like where you're at in life. When you're like 75 years old, that's your LinkedIn photo. That's on LOHIGH's, on LOHIGH's website. Keep that. I love it.
There we go.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to jump into today's show. We're going to be talking everything human capital as it relates to the COVID crisis that we're in. So we have a ton of guests today. I did a quick look at the attendee list. We have a lot of folks within human capital, HR generalists, talent sourcers, HRBPs, CHROs, vendors like myself, recruiters, headhunters, staffing agencies, consultants like yourself, David. This is one of those things where I just look at it and we're all in this together. I think a lot of companies and individuals are affected differently by this situation. So David and I took some time to kind of prep on the topic and really just center this conversation around the last, David, 7, 8, 9 years of, let's call it the bull market run, where we had a low unemployment environment. Take a look at today, what's happening from a macro lens, and then with a slight assumption, predict the environment that we're now entering, which is a recessionary, high unemployment environment, and how that playbook changes for folks in the human capital space. So, David, before I toss it over to you, just for my background, I normally don't go into my background over the show. I'm the founder of Lucas James Talent Partners. I run an on-demand recruiting outsourcing firm. We have a team of 35 individuals, most of which are senior level recruiters that our clients hire on an hourly basis to act as an extension of their talent acquisition teams in a flexible scale up and scale down manner. Prior to that, I spent over a decade at Aerotech or Allegis Group in various roles, recruiting, sales, national sales, and then the last 3.5 years I was there, I was partially running our Chicagoland department, or operations, I should say. So I've been in the human capital space, much like you, David, through the last, let's call it the Great Recession, the last environment that we've had. So let me toss it over to you for a quick background and maybe just kind of talk about where you were at in the 2001, 2008 recessions.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing. And I think, the journey that you've gone through over the past 10 years certainly has shown what a lot of businesses have been able to achieve through what I guess we would say mostly an upward hiring trend a lot of people working and building great careers and getting great compensation, and not really having to experience something like this. Yeah, I remember both. Unfortunately, I remember 2001. Where were you in 2001, Tim? Still in?
I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
I won't go into anything more. I was a senior
That,
in high school.
fair enough. You were just about getting ready to get into that next stage. Well, I was actually already working at that time. I remember it pretty well. Right after 9/11, I was actually working in the hospitality business, working for Four Seasons Hotels, and the travel industry came to a halt after 9/11. Directly impacted hotels because travel was, so stagnant at that point. A lot of the chains I remember having, significant layoffs, reducing rates, really just trying to attract any of the few travelers that were out there. The company I worked for had a pretty dramatic and drastically different approach. They actually went into like a wartime investment mode, and they were investing in initiatives really that would position them more strongly coming out of that recession. And I remember the impact it had. It had an impact on the position within the market. It had an impact on their market share, especially with kind of some of the luxury travelers. But what I took away from that was simply that when strong leaders can adjust their operations and prepare for whatever that new world looks like, you can come out on top versus maybe hunkering down and trying to hold tight to what you believed yesterday. So in 2001, there was a good lesson learned there. 2008 was an interesting one as well. So not only was there an economic downturn caused by the housing market crash, I was working in kind of, I guess, what we'll call the event space for a large provider of services in stadiums and arenas and convention centers and things like that. A big part of their revenue, like 1/4 of their revenue, hinged on the success of the NBA, who that same year started to go on a strike. I don't know if you remember that, but the NBA
Oh, yeah.
players had a strike at the beginning of the year, and if it had have impacted the whole year, we were talking hundreds of millions in revenue. It ended up luckily only being about a month long, fairly limited impact to the revenue loss. But what I do remember most about that year was that there was some really important opportunistic hiring available. In my case, mostly from our competitors. We lost a lot of really good people to other companies because we were really slow to go to market. We kind of paused and just said, let's just kind of see this through for a little bit versus taking a look at maybe where we had some lower performers and taking the opportunity of people who were searching for new roles to bring them on board and upgrade the talent a bit. So a little missed opportunity there, I think, in 2008 is something that comes to mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that for sure. So just to frame up, I guess, the next part of the conversation, let's talk about just openly around the last 7, 8, 9 years. I'll start, add some color. So when I look at, 2008, first quarter, decent. 2006, 2007, really good. Low unemployment. Everything was rocking and rolling. Housing prices were increasing. 2009, not so great. Beginning of 2010, not so great. We really started to come out of this thing into 2010 into 11. And then it's just been not hockey stick growth, but it's been on the up and up and up and up ever since. So let's just talk about some things there. Low unemployment environment, hitting record lows in just general unemployment all across the map. Most industries seeing a huge, huge uptick in their business. Global GDP increasing, expanding. Inflation, although increasing, staying well under control. How that environment relates to talent, and everybody on the phone has experienced these things because this is the environment that we were in 6, 7, 8 weeks ago. Hiring recruiters internally. It was a really, really, really good time to be a recruiter, especially a corporate recruiter. Corporations were doing everything they could to keep everything in-house, not just human resources or talent acquisition processes, but really anything. So in the outsourcing industry, companies were so confident that they were going to continue to grow in the human resource and people lens. They were going to continue to hire. That was part of the playbook, was just to do everything in-house. Certain skill sets were very, very, very hard to come by. You look at the supply and demand of certain skill sets. Take it, software developers, certain trends in leadership, healthcare IT consulting. I'm sure we can kind of go on and on of certain pockets of the market that were below 1% unemployment. That created a lot of different things that shifted the playbook on how to attract that talent. So companies were really just tossing money and dollars and hiring individuals in a way to attract that talent. So spending money on recruitment technology, tips and tricks, talent branding became a very, 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 very prominent thing. Spending a lot of money because it's a war for talent out there. We need to attract these individuals. How do we get them to come to us? When we get them to come to us, how do we close them? Talent branding became a huge thing and a huge subpart of the industry that we operate in. You think about the benefits, the perks, the office space. Here in Chicago, how many companies that were based out of the suburbs literally picked up and moved headquarters downtown right by the train station for the sole purpose of attracting talent? So think about some of the dynamics that we were in and what that meant for a lot of things. I'm going to toss it over to you to add some color to that. I have a few things
Great.
to kind of round that out, though.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of really good points and things that I could totally second. I'll give it some stats to start, because you talk about the low unemployment and go 10 years, even if you narrow it in the past 5 or 6 years. Listen, 8 weeks ago feels like a lifetime ago. 8 weeks ago, we were at about 3.5% unemployment. It had not been that low in the United States since 1969. 50 years. It was the lowest unemployment in 50 years. And so what does that create? It creates a very specific way, as you said, to attract, retain, grow, and develop talent. And it was a long time of building the approach and the strategy and the tools, resources, partnerships, technologies to managing that human capital. I like to focus on a few kind of key areas, and this will be a trend as we go throughout this conversation, that I think when I work with my clients and HR professionals, these are the three biggest areas I think that can create high-performing teams and ultimately have great careers grown within organizations: your talent acquisition, your talent development, and your talent engagement. Right? These are the three pieces. As it relates to talent engagement, you hit it right on the nail when you said a war on talent. It was a really war on talent the past 5 years, especially aggressive, expensive talent acquisition strategies, almost going to market at all costs to attract what little available talent there was out there, probably already working and successful, hopefully in their current roles. You talked about employer branding and a lot of energy spent on advertising your value proposition and what would differentiate you from working somewhere else. You also saw significant increases in compensation. Especially in some of those higher skill roles or less available roles. And in some points, overinflated compensation that made it tough for organizations with maybe leaner margins to really fight for. In conjunction, I think, with that significant increase in compensation, you saw shorter tenure in employment. People were willing to say, 18 months into a role, hey, let me see what's happening over there, because that might be a big boost for my career. And those opportunities were available everywhere. So I think some of the big things around talent acquisition was that just aggressive work to become an employer of choice and be able to get folks in the door. Around talent development, I think a lot of it was based on upskilling. In order to get people to fill the number of roles that were available, organizations had to bring in people who maybe didn't have all the skills that they needed. So investing in onboarding and upskilling in roles to get the best performance out of your workforce was a pretty big investment. And as well as, I think, maybe often over promoting some individual contributors into management and leadership roles, investing in the development of first-time managers, first-time leaders, giving them the skills to succeed. They were successful individual contributors, but maybe needed some skills to move into the management role and trying to promote from within. So a lot of work there was done to help strengthen an organization. And then around talent engagement, I think you kind of mentioned this, I think around culture and perks. There was a really, really strong focus on engaging the team through purposeful and meaningful work and having a strong kind of attention to the culture of the organization. That was a factor both for attention and retaining employees. But then there was a lot of investment just in what I call keeping up with the Joneses from a perk perspective. I think the value of the ping pong table in the office may have subsided now, but there was still a very strong demand for gourmet coffees and meals and gym memberships and other perks that may have taken budget dollars away from investing in other areas of kind of career opportunities, things like education and promotions and stuff. So there's quite a bit of that. The other kind of engagement piece that I think we're going to see more of because of this crisis is around the increase in flexible work. A lot of organizations, with the millennial generation being the largest workforce, really did want to start to focus on and figure out how to create flexible work opportunities. Some companies much better than others.
Totally. Yeah, but before we jump into the state of the state today, maybe
Sure.
predictions around what we're going to need to do going forward around talent management and talent development. I just think about a couple different things that are a direct reflection of the environment that we were in. So if you graduated, I wouldn't even say graduated, if you entered the workforce in 2010, 11, 12, and beyond, and what we're describing is all you know, think about the confidence, the psyche, the decisions that you make, and then how a people leader, a leader of a business, might need to navigate some of those things. So for example, you mentioned, there was a trend of people working 1 year at a place and then jumping ship. There's a lot of recruiting costs that go into that, but it was like,
Sure.
It is what it is.
Right.
This is what the folks in the market are doing, and we need to adapt to that. There was certain subsets of the market. I won't mention what those are, but where the skill set was in such high demand that you saw these salaries go through the roof. They knew that they were in high demand. They would ask for certain things, and it was almost like, hey, this department needs to work from home. Well, not everyone else is working from home. Give it to them. Who cares? Because it's going to take so long and so much money to find these individuals that companies were actually upholding their or turning their culture upside down just because of the labor market, which is crazy. And if you think back, we're all in different generations, but my grandparents were born in like the 19-teens, which meant that they entered the workforce right in the Great Depression, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about being a product of that environment where super high unemployment, 30% it hit for a long period of time, some of the, if you read generational trends, you would hear things as it relates to the labor market. I don't want to say loyalty to employer, but you were beheld to the employer that you had, because if you found a job and things were going okay, you stuck through that. That job was so important to you.
Absolutely.
It trickled into like savings and things like that, which then trickled into the confidence in consumer spending that led that depression to last for a period of time. But you think about a lot of the just the psyche, and that we're all a product of like where we came from and the environment that we're in. We've been in this crazy bull run for the past 7, 8, 9 years that I think a lot of the workplace, the employees within the workplace, it's going to take a little bit of a shift to move into what we're going to talk about next. So
totally agree.
Would you like to add anything before we move on?
Well, no, I think I've personally experienced that kind of confidence shift. I remember at each stage, and I've had fairly long tenures with some organizations I've worked with, and I remember at each stage, I'm kind of not just looking at what was happening today, but what happened yesterday and what could be happening tomorrow. I've always been a cautious career mover, where I think a lot of folks are very eager to see what's next for them. But there's no doubt that as we go into this new world, there will be value in the folks who are kind of evaluating the bigger landscape outside of the four walls in which they've worked or lived in, and be able to say, where might a really strong career move be for me? And not just from what role am I taking next, but what skills am I learning? What exposure am I getting from a networking and relationship building perspective in order to strengthen my future outside of just what I have today?
Absolutely. Very well said. By the way, for the attendees, Q&A, we want to keep this interactive. The last maybe 5 to 6, 8 minutes, we'll probably go 45 minutes or so. Bottom middle left of the Zoom screen as Q&A. You can type your questions in there. We'll read them off. I'll ask David. We'll kind of jam on that there. So if you have a question, please put it in there. All right, so let's move on. 6 weeks ago, we had a major impact on the United States, everybody's health. We're not going to get into the health side of it. That's on the news. How is this impacting businesses? The quarantine is affecting lots of industries, some industries more than most, as everyone knows. Bars, restaurants, hospitality, airlines are getting affected more than most. Being a recruiting firm, we're not an airline or a movie theater, but we're getting affected. Everybody's getting affected by this. There's a small percentage that are actually increasing the revenue throughout this time. So as we move into what the predictions are going forward and how that's going to affect the playbook for leading a people organization, I think you have to be a realist with what's really happening. I feel like the vibe maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago is that, oh, we're working from home for a little bit. China's going back to work. We're 2 months behind China. We're going to go to back to work too. Let's, as people leaders, let's focus on business continuity planning. Let's focus on getting everyone the technology they need to work from home. Then it started to turn to like, oh, wait, okay, this is going to be here potentially a long time. This is going to completely change a lot of things, not to get into the macroeconomic side of it, but there's never been a situation like this where the entire world shuts down. We are a global world. Supply chain is going to be impacted. The credit markets are being impacted. The bond market is being impacted. Commodity prices are being impacted. The smartest economists in the world can't predict with the appropriate complexity what's going to happen. So I think with that, as leaders of your departments, your organizations, whether you're a matriarch, patriarch of your family, you have to be a realist with what's going on. So let's assume that we're entering a recessionary environment. Just some stats. It was just announced today. The weekly jobs report came out. Another 4 million folks filed for unemployment last week. That's a total of 26 million over the past 5 weeks, I believe. So when the unemployment numbers come out, we're looking at somewhere in the teens, I believe, up to 20% or so. And I don't think it's going to be zero this week, unfortunately. So we're now entering, from a very low unemployment, highly confident environment where businesses are investing, they're acquiring companies, war for talent. We're now entering this state of low unemployment. Budgets are going to be tighter. There might be emotions related to the strategy that comes from the organization at the C level, which then trickles down into different departments, which then affects things and how it relates to talent management and talent development. David, I'm going to toss it over to you first. I'll add some color. Let's just talk about maybe referencing 01, 02, 08, 09. What are some of those playbook elements that are going to start to come into the forefront as we enter the rest of 2020?
Yeah, I think it's a great transition. I think right now, there are people within the talent, HR, and people space that are really hunkering down and trying to get through the day. What I'm hearing is more than ever, the teams related to maybe not talent acquisition and recruiting, but the other functions of people operations and human resources are kind of busier than ever, which is good, but not necessarily an ideal state to be in. And what I'm hearing is a lot of people are spending time and energy on creating consistent crisis communication plans, trying to impact their workforce through remote work effectiveness. They're doing a lot of workforce optimization with the associated furloughs and layoffs. They're spending time on implementing safety protocols, especially if it is a business that's still running within its four walls. And they're spending time managing things around the new regulations, sick time, FMLA, unemployment. Very, very busy and almost kind of fighting fires of the day more than they've ever had to, which is a good place to know you are important and needed within your business as an HR professional, but certainly not probably planning for the future. So if I look at some of the key strategies that I would work with my clients on right now, or I am working with my clients on right now, and that I would love to have conversations with folks about where should you be spending time, it's ultimately taking a look at where you need to be in the near future and where your company needs to be in the, I'll call it long term. I think the near future is 12 months out, meaning I think we are going to be living within a world of very slow growth, if any, and possibly more downturn, as you mentioned, with the unemployment over the course of 12 months. It doesn't mean people won't be back to work, back in office, back to open restaurants. There will be a lot, but with 18%, 15% unemployment, it's going to take a while to get those people back to work, which is going to create fear in the workplace, both from the leaders and the employees of businesses about what's next for me, about what do I need to spend time on. And so I think some of the things that our employees, that our HR leaders in particular should be spending time on is, first of all, understanding your new business objectives. What is going to be happening with your business within the next 12 months, not just in crisis mode today, but as you start to come out of this, and then from there, 24 months out. I think if the work and the playbook that you had last year, or if you're still operating off of a last decade playbook, it's going to be hard for your business to actually survive. So what is happening within your business, not from your people perspective, but from a business objective perspective over the next 12 to 24 months? From there, I think a strong strategy is to identify the critical employees within your business today and begin building retention strategies. Here's what's going to happen. As soon as opportunities start to bubble up again, folks who are looking towards new opportunities, maybe have a little fear within their current business, are going to start looking at other opportunities and potentially be flight risk. So if you know what you need to achieve over the next 12 to 24 months, really identify which critical groups or critical individuals are going to help get you there, and over-index and invest in retaining them to help the business get there.
Totally.
I think a good opportunity now is to start to implement some of the people processes that have always been on your bucket list, but specifically related to what you're trying to achieve as a business. A lot of HR professionals spend time kind of dealing with the fires of today, but always have that list. Oh yeah, we've been meaning to implement this. Oh yeah, we've been wanting to get stronger partners here. Oh yeah, we have a new initiative that we want to roll out to help with development or retention. Start to work on that today, so that once you start to have either time or money or people to reinvest in the business, you are ready to invest, and not starting with yesterday's playbook or starting from scratch at that time.
Sure.
And one other thing is I would recommend is staying lean. A lot of folks on this call probably either were reduced from their workforce or had to cut back on their team, and whether that was be recruiter teams or other folks within the talent space. For the short term, stay lean, because I don't think anyone knows how quickly that growth is going to happen, and especially when we get back to the hyper growth and the hockey stick that we were at just the past few years. So stay lean, but be ready to scale. So using partners, really trusted partners, get ahead of the curve on that. Know who you can go to for support and recruitment. Know who you can go to for support in development, and be ready to go to market for your employees as quickly as possible. So I think those are a couple things. I've got some more highlights around talent acquisition and development specifically, but I'll let you chime in on what I just shared.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that you said. I think some of these are obvious. If there's 26 million folks that had a job 2 months ago that don't have a job now, think about the volume of applications that are going to be coming in. Think about, you had mentioned the folks that are currently working, but might have a little bit of fear in terms of their current situation and might be passively looking or actively looking, but working right now. So think about some of those things. What happened in 2008, there was a shift from a focus on doing things internally through investment to cost containment and flexibility. So what I mean by that is, when there's certainty, it's easy to get that approval for that next hire. It's easy to get that approval for the new recruiting software. It's going to be really hard. And you had mentioned staying lean. The confidence will take a longer time to come back into the marketplace for leaders as it relates to the checkbooks, the pocketbooks. So what I mean by that is, the focus on contingent workers is going to see a dramatic increase. Before, it didn't really make a lot of sense to do a temp to hire or a temporary assignment, because all the folks that you would want on that project or part of your team were working right now. So you just hired them full time because that's what the labor market wanted.
Yep.
Focus on contingent hires. That temp to hire is going to come back in full swing. It's something we don't do. It's the staffing companies that are hurting right now, but looking forward to that opportunity. Find yourself a good partner. I would focus on the reliance on your vendors and on your partners. There's some big companies that are going to go out of business. I just saw that Hertz is talking about filing for Chapter 11.
Oh my goodness.
As this trickles into the marketplace more and more and more, take a look at your vendors. Some of those vendors, ask them how their cash flow is doing. What is their plan to get through this themselves? The reliance on a key vendor that might not be around in 3 to 6 months is a very, 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 very real possibility. And then cost containment, doing more with less. Now might be the time to look at some of those softwares that might have been luxuries before, but that can increase the productivity of a team, maybe around some of those things that weren't as prevalent before, like the volume of applicants. So start to think about some of those things. You had also talked about talent development a little bit, and maybe, how do we get more productivity out of the labor force that we have right now? So before, the last 7, 8, 9 years was very much a buy strategy. We're going to buy the talent in the marketplace that came with a certain set of skills. We're going to apply recruiting resources. We're going to pay 25% fees. We're going to do a bunch in talent branding. Think about what that build strategy might be. Maybe we have a 2,000 person organization, a 200 person organization, doesn't matter. How do we level up some of these skills to get more productivity, to get more leadership out of the folks that we have right now, knowing that it's going to be tougher to, buy talent in the future, or at least get the approval to do so? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. Quick tying a bow on the talent acquisition piece. I do think now is a time to get ahead of hiring, not necessarily for net new roles. As you said, approval's probably not coming through for new roles that were in the forecast for later on in this year, but around top grading. Get ahead of it now, be ready to hire folks, take a look at your higher performers and your lower performers on every team, and start building the pipeline to replace low performers with really, really high-end talent, because that talent in many markets will start to bubble up and be much more available than it was yesterday. As you mentioned, ensure that your recruitment process is tight. Invest in either aligning the right technologies or the right process in order to ensure it goes fast and clean, because as the economy starts to recover, other individuals, and this might be 12 months down the road, but or 24 months, you don't want to be behind. The individuals that are on the market are going to start becoming in higher and higher demand. So you need to be effective at that. You said it really well on the talent development piece. What critical and transferable skills do leaders, managers, employees need to impact the business in the new world? I think investing in managers, but a little different skill set. I think building higher emotional intelligence and the ability to manage people in different ways, whether it be a remote workforce, a different type of workforce, team structures that have been reorganized in order to kind of adjust to this reality. Managers are going to need new skills, especially young managers who have not been through some form of crisis or massive change before. And then the other part is around that career pathing. How do you build transferable skills that ensure workers are more flexible and resilient in time of crisis, rather than taking a look at someone saying, we can no longer use this person? How can you build a team that says, this person is great, we want to keep them, but we're going to move them into this critical role now? And so almost making yourself a bit more crisis proof.
Well said, David. We're going to get into some Q&A here in a second. I think the whole point of this conversation, it was originally a shock to the system, mobilizing a workforce to a remote environment in a lot of cases for most companies, or business continuity planning for, say, manufacturing or essential businesses, to probably cost containment or cost cutting strategies. I would imagine everybody on this call has probably been through some of the hardest times in their professional career over the last 4 to 6 weeks. We're all in this together. I think at a certain point, you have to turn the page and look towards what's that new playbook for myself? How am I going to change up my strategy? How am I going to bring more to the organization to help our organization get through this? We've had to do a lot of that too. We were an hourly recruiting service. So when companies did a lot of hiring, they would hire our recruiters. Our cost per hire was really low. And we would tell them, hey, avoid recruiting fees. And that's kind of how we grew. I don't see companies spending money on recruiting fees anytime soon, right? I don't see, we used to do a lot of Series A, Series B, Series C, like major hiring ramps, and where a model would make a lot of sense. I don't see that happening anytime soon. So now we've kind of moved to being that flexible, scalable partner for organizations that, if you can't hire a recruiter back full time, partner with us. You can scale us up, scale us down, turn us on, and turn us off. With that contingent push moving forward, it's probably going to take a little bit. I think people just got over the shock of some of the tough decisions that had to be made. But think about payrolling services over utilizing a high cost staffing vendor. So we've added a payroll solution. So we're trying to change up our game. I know that other companies are trying to change up their game. I think all of us have to change up our game because there's just a tidal wave of stuff that's in front of us that we just haven't experienced in a really long time. Moving to some of the questions. Let's see here. Okay, Chris Freeman asks, considering of the unemployment that has resulted from COVID, do you think the employment/unemployment yo-yo will come back into and employment will rebound as quickly as it contracted when we begin to reopen? Great question.
I'll take a stab at that. I don't think even close. I think there is going to be a longer term fear than we saw after 9/11 and certainly after 2008, because it is a direct fear that touches every individual in America. And whether or not this pandemic gets completely squashed as quickly as possible and the risk of infection has reduced, there will still be a change in behavior, in consumer behavior, in how you live your lives with friends, family, it's social hobbies. And I think that fear will create a lot of changes in behavior that will slow down a quick rebound. It will rebound, but I think it will rebound in a different way. And frankly, I think hiring will start again within 12 months because there's so many businesses that are technically shut down right now. They're going to need to bring people back on board. But to get back down to sub 6%, I believe will take several years.
By the way, if there's folks that are listening right now that are in transition and looking for their next opportunity, we didn't get a chance to talk a little bit about some strategies there. Reach out to me personally, tim@lucasjamestalent.com. Be more than happy to help, introduce you to someone on our team. We have a talk track around that could help people get back to work as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, I tend to agree with David. Back in 08 and 09, I was 24 years old in 2008. I really grew up during that time. I really had to mature during that time. That whole thing affected myself, my family, my dreams, all this kind of stuff. And I really started to research what was happening in the economy. And I think with this, you need to look at, what the unemployment is going to do to individuals. That's going to trickle into bankruptcies. That's going to trickle into foreclosures. That's going to trickle into behavioral or psychological changes around confidence. When people are confident and they know they're going to have a paycheck, they start to spend money on things. When they don't have that confidence, that's going to result in different consumer spending. So I do think a lot of people are going to go back to work. I think that's the question mark. Out of 26 million, I would hope it's the big majority of that just go back to work, and then we're just rocking and rolling. I don't know if the virus is going to let us do that. So with that being said, I think although that's a very dark picture, again, if you're leading a people team, if you're leading a company, if you're leading, if you're just thinking personally about yourself and your family, you have to be a realist in scenarios like that, even though it's not a pretty picture to be talking about right now. And it's a lot different than the last 7, 8, 9 years.
Tim, you had mentioned one thing earlier about different industries being impacted, right? We know there are industries that are more impacted short term and some probably a little more long term, but there are going to be a lot of industries that come out of this with like running full speed, right? That train is moving because of what they've had to do to get through this. There will be businesses and industries that we don't even know about today that will be building and growing at a much higher rate and probably doing a lot of hiring. That's something I think as professionals, we should be researching the heck out of. Identify which industries and business lines are going to rebound quicker or even come out of nowhere, and then target those for your own opportunities or for people in your network that are looking to get back to work. Don't necessarily put all your eggs in your current industry basket is my point. Identify what you might need to learn in order to grow to become qualified for some of the new or higher growth businesses that come out of this that might not have been the same as they were yesterday.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Richie Marrero, what's up, Richie? Richie asks, should organizations double down on talent and benefits now? Talent, which was once very competitive. There was a fight for talent, which was hard to come by, is now more available as the unemployment rate jumps to 26 million.
Let me take a stab at that. Thanks, Richie. I think one thing worth noting in that is that, yes, certain businesses should be doubling down. Come out of this stronger, as I mentioned earlier. That's top grading your team and upgrading lower performers, invest in them today, identify what it's going to take if you have the right cash flow, identify what it's going to take to put in the most robust benefits or perks or cultural plans in order to be ready to attract the best, strongest candidates when you're ready to hire, whether it be through net new or replacements. But the time to act is today, even if it's planning and getting ready to pull the trigger when you can either afford to or you feel confident enough that your industry or business will rebound quickly.
I think that's an offensive strategy. If there's like confidence in the industry, business picking up, the revenue channels, your cash position, I think this is a chance for companies to get on the offensive. Just like in 08, 09, just like in 2001, 2002, just like any other recession, the companies that really doubled down and invested during this time when other companies were scaling back through fear came out very strong on the other side. So that's something I think about all the time. I think that's a balance because there's a lot of unknowns. But yeah, Richie, I think there's going to be certain companies that take that approach. The problem is you don't know a company's cash position unless they're publicly traded. That drives everything, their cash and their availability for credit. So these private companies in the upper mid-market down to small businesses, that's going to be a key factor in how aggressive they're going to be as it relates to your question, making investments on people.
One thing to supplement that is I think planning doesn't have to cost much. The execution will cost, and whether that be in hiring or bringing on new technologies or investing in sales and marketing for gaining new clients. But planning to be ready to pull the trigger doesn't have to cost a lot. Just don't wait to start your planning until you are confident you're ready to execute, because then it's going to be too late, especially since most likely whatever you're having to do is going to be a new strategy than what you did yesterday.
Well said. We have another question also from Richie. Does talent come at a discount? I'll take a quick stab at that. I think talent's going to be very similar to real estate. When recessions happen, the real estate market tends to lag with everything going on. Meaning, if you had a house on the market for $100,000 and that's what you wanted, and your mindset is in this like boom time type of environment, maybe you bought it for $96,000, you're not going to want to take anything less than 100. You're probably for sure not going to want to take anything less than 96,000. That takes a long time for that psyche to really kind of change your mind when people start to get in a tight spot. I think it's the same thing with talent. You don't want to offend somebody by making an offer on a $100,000 house for $40,000. It's the same thing with talent. I think there's going to be discounts to be made, but you're dealing with people, and in my opinion, you're dealing with your most important asset. So you got to be careful around that. So yes, but you got to be careful around how you navigate that. David?
I'll add a little to that. I agree with you. I think there will be a time that the trickle down effect of this has the overall compensation for given roles lower because it's simply supply and demand will guide it down that direction. But on a one-on-one basis, to assume you can suddenly offer less is probably a misleading strategy. With that said, I will say that you can reinvest your dollars a lot smarter today, not just in people, but in the ancillary costs of people, whether it be your perks, benefits, and other expenses that come into overall employment. You now have an opportunity to really look at what matters most to your employee base. What might have mattered yesterday might be very different than what matters today and tomorrow, and how you spend your money on perks, benefits, and other things can shift in order to take care of a employee group with a different mentality about what's important to them. But immediately pulling dollars off the paycheck is probably not the best strategy.
Well said, David. We're gonna kind of close it out right here. We're at about the 46-minute mark. Thank you so much for coming on board. Thank you everybody for joining and listening and watching. Everyone in the human capital space, it's a really tough time for the world, for the country. You gotta lock arms with your peers. We're all in this together. We're all experiencing the same thing. Now is the time to share best practices, help each other out in need. If you need help, do not be scared or shameful or prideful to ask for help. We are all in this together. We will get out the other side of this. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, tim@lucasjamestalent.com. We're going to have more people-related shows in the future, so look out for those. David, if they want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love connecting on LinkedIn, so please do, David Loiselle, or you can email me directly at lohighconsulting@gmail.com. And same applies here. Any support or any help that anyone needs, even if it's just a robust conversation about what other businesses are doing, I'd be thrilled to have those conversations with you. So don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you for your time today, Tim. It was fantastic being here.
Absolutely. Take care, David.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.